So a little bit about myself. I do reside in New Jersey and finished the MSJ or the MLS program that it's now called in 2021. I started my pharmaceutical journey back on the agency side, working in marketing many years ago after college, knowing that I wanted to stay in the pharmaceutical arena within my career path. Started on the agency side, got my experience, went to work for Organon USA, which did focused on women's health products. From there, I did take time off to have my daughter, and then decided that I wanted to go right back into pharma. I joined a company called LifeCell that was based here in New Jersey. From there, there was a divestiture. I went to work for KCI, which was based in San Antonio, Texas. From there, I had the great honor when the company was purchased by 3M, which makes your Post-its, your Scotch products, your mouse pads, your air filters, and got to join one of the largest healthcare companies in the world. Besides healthcare, obviously, they have a lot of other products that they manufacture. About a year ago, 3M announced they were spinning off the healthcare business. So I am one of the founding members of a new company that will go public probably in the next few months. That's going to be called Solventum. We are building the company from the ground up, and it's been a real exciting opportunity for me to see it from a different perspective and what goes into building a healthcare company with 21,000 people when you're going to go global. So in addition to my MSJ degree, I also have an MBA from Fairleigh Dickinson. Some of you may be familiar. It's located in central New Jersey, and I focused on strategic planning within the pharmaceutical marketing area. And on the side note, I'm a big New York Jets fan, New York Mets, New Jersey Devils, and love to travel and love the theater in New York City. So that's me in a nutshell.
Thank you so much, Michelle. And thank you for joining us tonight. Next, I'm going to call on Masha Goodman-Kahn to introduce herself.
Thank you so much, Gregory. Hi, Michelle. It's nice to see you again. Michelle and I graduated together, so it's always very nice to see a friend. I'm just very thrilled to be here with everybody. As Gregory said, my name is Masha Goodman-Kahn. I am the Director of Compliance and Legal Operations at Vericel Corporation, which is based in Cambridge, Massachusetts. I live just outside of Boston, Massachusetts. I will say, before I get into my professional career, and hopefully you'll not hold this against me, my professional sports alliances do align with New England. So I am a big Boston Bruins fan. I know, let that be my one, my one flaw, right? I have other redeeming qualities, but I am a big Bruins fan. I have been in the pharmaceutical, medical device, and biotech industry for my entire career. I hold an undergraduate degree in biological sciences, and of course got my MSJ at Seton Hall a couple years ago now. But so all my experience has been in healthcare and regulatory compliance and law in general. And so I just really think that this has just been really a great space. I have predominantly stayed more in the healthcare and biotech space. I have dabbled in some traditional medical device, but throughout my career, I really found that with compliance professionals, so many of them were attorneys, so many of them were not. They might have held law degrees, they might not have. And I realized that I wanted to fill a gap because I just felt that, having a law degree was going to be really important, and what I wanted that to look like, I wasn't sure yet. So that's sort of what brought me on this journey and how I ended up attending Seton Hall Law, which was truly and sincerely one of the greatest things that I've ever done, and very rewarding, and something that I utilize to this very day. My job in a nutshell is split between compliance and legal operations. So I do kind of wear two hats, and I think we'll jump into that in a little bit. But aside from what I think we can all most of you will believe as poor taste in, in sports. I reside in Massachusetts, like I said, with my husband and our 2 children. And my, 6-year-old is probably the most non-compliant person I've ever met. So I feel like my work is cut out for me, and I'm just so thrilled to meet so many of you and connect on LinkedIn and address any questions you might have. Thank you so much. Thanks, Gregory.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Masha, and thank you for joining us tonight. Last but certainly not least, I want to call on Michael Estep to introduce himself.
Yeah, hi, everybody. Good evening. Glad to be here. My name is Michael Estep. I'm the Director of Global Project Management for Seton Pharmaceuticals. We're a CDMO that focuses on manufacturing and development for large pharma, for small molecule intermediates, drug substance, and drug product. It's a foreign company, so I work in a branch office here, so I necessarily wear a lot of hats. So I do the contract review. In addition to the project management, I do some FDA filings and things of that nature. So instead of pursuing the MBA, I started looking into healthcare programs, and the Seton Hall program, to me, it was different from other ones that I looked at. It seemed more targeted towards what I would get the most out of. I started in January of 2020, and I submitted my last assignment in December of 21. Um, it was, I agree with Masha and Michelle. It was definitely very rewarding. It was challenging, but, I was able to apply the things that I learned right out of the gate, I would say. So I'm very grateful, which is why I'm here. Other than that, personally, I live in Central Jersey with my wife, my 2 teenage sons, and our 5 dogs. And I like to cycle, and I'm an aspiring. My wife and I are calling it back half athlete. So the back half of our lives, we're we're getting a little bit more fit, and doing some competitions now. So glad to be here.
Michael, thank you. As I stated before we got started, we have some phenomenal panelists. And as you can tell through their introductions, they've accomplished some great things in their careers. And tonight we're here to talk about some of those accomplishments, some of their competencies. But one thing to keep in mind is that we have a mixed crowd tonight. So some of our questions and answers will be geared directly towards some of our graduate students in our Master's in Legal Studies program. But some of our questions will be open to all of the law students, as we have some JDs online with us tonight as well. So with that being said, I would like to transition into our question portion of the night. Our first few questions are going to be answered by all panelists, and we'll stick to the order that we did the introductions with. So our first question to panelists tonight is, as a professional, what skills or competencies have you found to be most valuable in your career and in your current role? Michelle, we'll start with you.
Thanks, Greg. I wanted to further add to my introduction because I failed to mention I was so excited about my career that I currently work for 3M Healthcare, and I am the global category manager for all marketing activities. So whether I'm doing a TV commercial, PR, whatever, if it falls under marketing, I make it happen. So to build on that, for me, the skills and competencies that I need, it may sound silly, but patience. Patience is a virtual listening to your internal stakeholders. I need to be the best I can be in negotiations. I do the contracts. Whether it's a $1,000 contract or a $4 million contract, I am the person that makes it happen. So negotiations, patience, also listening. I think that's so important, that it was a skill that I had to work on because I like to talk and get involved and move my hands, but I had to take a step back and listen to what my internal stakeholders want. And I think another skill that's super valuable is time management. And I know going through the MLS program, MSJ program, a lot of us do have families. We had full-time jobs and we had to get those assignments in at the stroke of midnight. It wasn't 12:01 a.m. And we had to make sure that we met those deadlines. And Michael knows exactly what I'm talking about. So time management is so crucial, I think, within my company. And those are some areas skills that I use every day that I enhance during the program at Seton Hall.
Thank you, Michelle. Masha?
Yeah, it's so interesting, some of the points that Michelle brought up, I think echo regardless of, where in the industry you are and what your role and function is. So as I had stated, my responsibility split between corporate compliance and legal. And so I don't necessarily, it's not quality compliance. That's more of a niche thing. This is just general sort of corporate compliance. So I always sort of refer to the job and the need as kind of playing the long game. Like, what is it about, being in a compliance officer or a member of the legal department that is going to help the organization play the long game? And that is being open to to all the different ideas that the different stakeholders might have. The nice thing about the job that I'm in is I'm always with different departments. So I always know that I'm working with lots of different personalities. That could be with marketing, that could be with medical, that could be with market access, sales individuals, clinical, quality, right? It runs the gamut. Whoever works at our organization predominantly at some point, for one reason or another, will need to, whether they want to or not, will need to cross paths with the legal department. And I want that to be as good of an experience and as meaningful of an experience for anyone, whether it's a very simple question. So maybe they had some trepidation, they asked their question, they realize it's not so bad, they got their answer and they're able to move on. Or if it's something that I don't know, I'm very comfortable to say, I actually don't know, but I'm going to get you an answer, because I think it's kind of like a fool's errand to believe that like you have the answer to everything always. And it shows that like you're very much invested and interested in what somebody wants to do. And it also shows like this interest in proactivity and moving the business forward. So often I think that like sometimes this department can get like a bad rap anywhere, right? Just across the board. Oh, it's stuck with legal. Oh, compliance. Oh, whatever. And, I think part of that is thinking about, the short term, but then also playing the long game and figuring out what it is that they're hoping to achieve and how you can sort of help. So some of my mottos have been, if not this, then something else, right? It's not, no, it's maybe not exactly the way you envisioned, because we have to take regulations and certain laws into consideration, right? We work in the most regulated industry. One might argue the most regulated industry. And so it's a complicated thing. So what can I do to help to sort of move this along? Because of course we still have goals and objectives that we want to meet. And as much as I want to be able to help, navigate folks and figuring out not just how to solve the problem today, but again, the long game, what can I help you do to solve for 6 months from now, a couple of years from now? I think it's also allowing people to sort of pie in the sky it and being a really good listener and taking some time and letting them say, all right, this is everything that I want, and not being so quick to think of all the ways it can go wrong. Because I do think it's a bit of an occupational hazard to go, oh, here's the thing. Here's why this is going to be a problem for the 5 reasons off the top of my head. Give people time, let them work through it. And I think it's that it builds goodwill, and I think it builds a lot of important rapport. So whether I'm reviewing their contracts, whether it's a compliance concern about something that they might have witnessed or they went through, and this has been throughout my career, or it's just a project or an initiative that they want to take on. Let people sort of bring their ideas to you, and just the idea of being a good listener and being very solution oriented while keeping the long game in mind. So not just being a yes person for the sake of saying yes, for the sake of likability, I think has been really important. And again, I echo Michelle's sentiments. I can't emphasize, the time management thing enough, certainly. But I think those are the things that have carried well through the Seton Hall program upon our graduation, but certainly in work right now.
Thank you very much, Masha, for that insightful answer. Michael, we'll
Yeah.
finish up question one with you.
Sure. So yeah, definitely time management. For what I do, I have to travel a lot, so it was nice being able to do things while I was on the road, but definitely time management because it was different time zones, very different time zones sometimes. So definitely that helped. And I think to one of Masha's points about the impression that people may have about legal and compliance, it gave me a little bit more empathy and patience with them to understand where they were coming from and saying, hey, you know what, that I see why that makes sense and why we need to kind of pay attention to that. For me, the language choice was actually one of the important things that I got out of the program. Starting from the first course that I had to take, which was the Intro to Law and Legal Writing. Understanding how to be more efficient and effective in my communication has helped me tremendously. Uh, Certainly, as I mentioned, I review the contracts, whether that's a confidentiality agreement, a master service agreement, purchase order, whatever it is. I'm the one that reviews that within the organization. And so understanding the contract construction and interpretation was very important to understand kind of the nuances of the language choice that people make, and then also to identify and more effectively mitigate the risks more proactively for not just for my organization but for our customers. Identifying where they might want to consider taking a look, um, and kind of proactively reacting and making suggestions for them. Whereas before, without, understanding, the law and the regulations to the degree, looking at the case law as well, I wasn't as effective at doing that. Operationally, it was fine, but from the legal and compliance aspect, um, that just wasn't there to the same degree. So.
Awesome. Thank you very much. I'm actually going to move on to question four for our panelists. And I'm going to direct this to Masha and Michelle. Are there any professional certifications outside of the degree that you've acquired or are planning to acquire? Michelle, you want to start with that?
Sure, thank you. For me, I have been, since I finished the MSJ program and learned so much, and I know we'll get to the other question of how it applies to our current role. I've been thinking about my MHA. I do teach grad school in my free time, and I teach in an MHA program. I teach microeconomics and healthcare. So very niche market to a very targeted group of students. And as I teach, it inspires me. I learn from my students every week, and someone brings a great new topic or something happening in current events, similar to what we had at Seton Hall Law with the discussion boards and questions, where everyone interacts. And part of my responsibility is to interact. And the more I learn and I see this program, I've been figuring out, is this something I really want to do? How is it going to help me get ahead in my career? Will it help me? And the other question is someone else going to help me pay for it? So I think that that's something else that some of us have experienced, and we've been very fortunate that our employers have supported us through the Seton Hall and or other programs. And for some of you tonight, maybe that is the case. That's wonderful. For others, you're working super hard to pay for all these classes, and it will help you in the long run for whatever your next goal will be. So again, I've been looking at that, and I also think I had my MBA prior to the MSJ, and that really kind of was a great foundation and start for me in the industry. But coming out of undergrad now, the MBA didn't set me apart because they have the 4+1 programs. So I needed to come, I went for the MSJ to differentiate myself, my skill set from others, because when I talk about it, they're like, oh, I didn't know such a program existed. And I'll send them the link to Seton Hall. So I had to try to make a difference for myself, to make my career, to enhance my learning, to make me more valuable to my employer. So that's me. And I do have to give a shout out. My brother is on the line. He is in healthcare. He's looking at the program, but he is a Boston Red Sox fan, Patriots fan. So there's a little tension in our family, but I did want to give him a call out tonight.
Thank
I'm
you,
not
Michelle.
alone. Thank goodness. Woo! I feel much better now.
And Masha, I wanted to kick that question over to you as well.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you. So a few things. So depending on where you are, whether you're going through the program, you're a JD student, you're an MLS student, or what we call the MSJ program. If you aren't sure and you have this sort of notion, you're like, well, I don't know if I definitely want to go into healthcare, and compliance is not a field that's going anywhere as it relates to healthcare in the industry, and it does not have to be in the pharmaceutical industry or medical device. You could work for a hospital, you could work for any number of facilities, like elder care facilities. It could be anything, right? So if something to that effect is something that interests you, and this idea of like healthcare compliance just as a whole is something that has piqued your interest, and maybe you've touched on it some during your program, maybe that's not part of your track and your concentration, so that's not something you've gotten a chance to get into. My concentration was doubled. It was the pharmaceutical and medical device law and compliance, and hospital and health policy. But there's so many classes I would have loved to take. It just wasn't feasible for me to do it, right? The one thing that I would recommend, no matter where you are in that program, again, if that healthcare compliance is just like an itch that you might have, is actually the healthcare compliance program that Seton Hall offers. Other law schools offer it, sure, but let's be honest, like the one through Seton Hall has been absolutely fantastic. And I took that a couple years before I got my MSJ, so before I properly went to the law school. What it did for me might actually do the same thing, it just in reverse, and I think it's equally useful. And that is, it'll give you a flavor into, is this something that actually interests you in an area you want to further explore and stay without a massive commitment? Number one, it's about a 4 to 5 day commitment, and as far as your time, and you do get a certificate when it's over, and therefore you have your healthcare compliance certificate, which is great. And that actually is something that healthcare professionals do ask one another if they have it. That's pretty useful. But number two, whether you finish the program or not, you get a chance. The speakers that come across are not cut from the same cloth. It is a very interesting amalgamation of former district attorneys and people that worked for the FBI, and then people in big pharma, and people that worked in IT and regulatory affairs and med affairs. And they kind of run the gamut, but they give you this really interesting holistic view in the compliance program. So I think that if compliance is something that you want to do anyway, you should get the certificate. But if compliance is something that you aren't sure about and it's worth dabbling, considering the cost, and Michelle's exactly right, like all of these things are an investment in time and of course money. In the grand scheme of things, I think that, I'm not exactly sure what it goes for. I think it's something like $750, but in that is still a lot of money. Maybe your employer can cover it, maybe not. But if it's something that you think you would like to do with your career, I really think that kind of certificate will serve you either which way. Because at no point has anyone really said to themselves, well, I'm so sad I learned something. Right? I don't think anyone really like walks away with that. So I do think that if compliance is your thing, look into the US healthcare compliance program, the certificate program. It's great. And I did it, and I will say that the way that Seton Hall does it is what solidified my decision to definitely apply to the law school later. We obviously already know that we love the law school. But it's now just another sort of piece that you can add into your resume that I think will set you apart.
Thank you so much. Michael and Michelle, transitioning to our sixth question here. Sometimes as we reflect on our careers, we recognize that they are not linear in nature. Can you speak to the journey your career has taken you on and to the trajectory that you see for your career in the future? And Michael, I'll start with you.
Sure. So I actually, my undergraduate degree was in biotechnology and biochemistry with a focus on microbiology. But coming of then out of grad school, my options were counting colonies on a plate, or I could go into a lab. So I kind of diverged from my original course. I mean, I knew I wanted to work in pharma. That was clear to me. So I actually started off in the lab, working in the Kilo lab as an operator, and then also as an analytical chemist. And then as I grew in the organization, I started getting into the project coordination. And so a little bit looking at cross-functional teams and things like that, kind of coordinating the aspects for different projects. And as I did that, then all of a sudden I'm getting the tech packages and getting some of the contracts that are getting sent to me, and they're asking me to take a look and my opinion on those things. And then as I did that, then all of a sudden that became my responsibility. And I kind of have a linear path. I've been with the same company for 21 years. So I haven't changed around as much as say Michelle has. But I have graduated through different roles. So then I became a project manager, and again, additional responsibilities got loaded on with creating and submitting some FDA submissions, um, being the U.S. representative for the organization, and things like that. And I got to the point where I said, all right, my career is linear, but it's branched out into different areas. And so to me, I wanted to enhance my career, and similar to what Masha and Michelle had said, I wanted to more effectively do my job. I wanted to make myself more valuable within the organization. So I started looking at some of the programs that were available. And so the MSJ program at the time, again, MLS, it was very directed, and it looked like it was a lot more relevant to what it is that I did as, being more on the manufacturing side of drug product as opposed to the healthcare side. I was a dual track. I was like Masha, I was pharmaceutical and medical device law, but I also did intellectual property law. So for me, understanding, obviously we handle a lot of sensitive information for big pharma. They're very, very sensitive about these things. And so understanding the law for our own, internal programs, right, and our own discoveries, it's important to know that, but also to give the customers some comfort as well, right? So, I'm signing off on these agreements and I'm having discussions with lawyers. And so it was helpful to go through the program. And, as Masha had said, you have different people. So some of the classes had lawyers in them. Other people had, compliance people, regulatory affairs. There were nurses, all kinds of professions that were in these programs. And it was really, it was really interesting and rewarding to get the different perspectives on the same topics, right? And so coming out, once I did get the degree, then, there were obviously, so then I became promoted, and, then I became a director level. And, more recently, I was given a responsibility to oversee all the project management within the organization. So I'm still retaining, all the contract reviewing and everything. But now I have people under me to help me with the project management aspect of it. So it's definitely been, I think both Michelle and Masha used the word differentiator. It's exactly the word I had in mind. It's something that made me stand out over others that really made a difference.
Thank you. I love how you speak about how throughout your career Seton Hall has helped to make a difference into both enhancing your career and to where your career is headed to. So thank you for that, Michael. Michelle, did you want to add?
I will. And I think I'm going to take mine in reverse. I would not be where I am today and have applied for the position I have if it weren't for my MSJ degree. I would have not even come close with some of the qualifications in the job description. Yeah, I had a master's degree already, but the contract work, the negotiations, the insight into legal writing, all of these things were kind of my job description. And without this program, they probably would have had a JD in my role. So in some ways, I took a gamble when I applied and I was like, I have a unique background and maybe I'm not the expert in contracts yet, but I have the foundation and the skills. Can I go up against any attorney? Yeah, I would hope that they would respect me and teach me enough to help me get to the next level. Did I have the compliance already internally? Yeah, I had some of that background. I further enhanced it in the program. So when I applied for this job, I kind of was a shoo-in because I brought a unique perspective to the plate. So I would never have applied, and I did. I don't know if Professor Slater is on the line or not, but I told her and I thanked her time and time again for the things that she helped guide us through in the program. I would never have taken this gamble to be where I am. So for me, it was, although in healthcare, although in compliance, a shift that I'm on calls with attorneys all the time. And they ask me, Michelle, what do you think? I'm like, really? I've earned that respect. And I think it makes you feel pretty darn good that you know that the Seton Hall program shaped where I am today. Am I going to go into the law department at my current employer? No, I don't have that JD. Could I go in a new type of role? I'm sure if I created it in the job description and that's something that I wanted, I could probably make a pretty good pitch for it. But I go up against my suppliers' legal teams. And the beauty is, I don't have to have an attorney for my company on the call, unless it's really IP related. But it's just a sense of confidence and a sense of pride. So I'm kind of backtracking for where Michael kind of took you through his journey and how it enhanced him in the same company. Mine made a difference in my company for where I am.
Yeah, and that's amazing. And one of the points that you bring up is, or you say, you don't need an attorney with you. That is something that is pivotal or very, very important for our MSJs on the line or MLS students on the line, but also for our JDs, because for our JDs who decide that they don't actually want to practice law, you could still work law adjacent, right? So a lot of the work that you all are doing is in the realm of compliance, and Michael in project management, but very closely related with contract negotiations, right? And I think that's a great segue into our next question, which is, what is the most interesting part of your workday? And what are some of the challenges that kind of energize you? I want to open that question up to both Masha and Michael. But Masha, if you don't mind kicking off the answer to that question.
So thank you, Gregory. Yeah, so when you work in healthcare, like I had said, again, very, very regulated, right? And so when it's very regulated, you want to think about being able to help folks achieve whatever the next greater purpose is. That is a product launch. If there's a new product, that could be just a campaign of some kind. That could be a consulting, agreement that needs to transpire. That could occur on the commercial side. That can occur, excuse me, on the medical side. And I think that creating ideas in general, or like marketing a product in general, can be really easy if you don't have any like parameters and barriers to take in mind. If everything is on the table, then marketing is pretty straightforward. But when you are under such intense restraints, then that's when it becomes a lot harder. And so I think the most interesting part of my day is when I'm working with all of those internal stakeholders that I mentioned before, and they are being as creative as they possibly can, right? Let them pie in the sky it. And again, I want to take what they're saying, marinate on it a little bit, digest, think about what they're actually trying to accomplish. And is that something that we can still get to and meet the end goal, taking all of the laws and regulations into consideration, right? And I think that if that causes irritation, if the idea of not knowing the answer immediately is something that like causes someone to be uneasy, then they're not in the right job. Because the most interesting part is the fact that people are always trying to be creative. Sometimes you're having a similar conversation, right? Like if the law says X and you want to do Y, well, I don't know what to tell you. Like there's just no two ways about it. But if you want to create a way to impact and improve patients' lives, right, which is ultimately the goal, and there's good intent and it's well thought out, and people are receptive and everyone understands that we are here to work towards a common goal, right? We're all moving the needle together. We just have a different angle that we're approaching. Then I think that's what makes it a lot more interesting. I don't feel very often that I'm ever mentally on autopilot, and that I appreciate very much. I've certainly worked at places where I have been on autopilot. And while that can be okay, there's a level of comfort there for sure, right? It's very, very comfortable. You're not growing. It's not something that is going to challenge you and therefore is problematic. So, you know, I say that because the most interesting part of my day is the one that I don't anticipate, right? I don't know what people are going to bring to me and what they're going to want to work through. One of my other responsibilities is I am a reviewer in our promotional review committee that we have at our organization. And so I have a particular scope of an area of focus. And so again, these are the different areas where content will come in. And so we're all looking and trying to figure out, I don't know what they're going to bring. I don't know what new ideas they have. And these are some of the most creative and bright individuals that I get the privilege to work with. And how do we figure out how we want to sort of, move the needle and navigate something forward, all while knowing that the industry is not getting any less regulated, right? It's only getting the same, if not more regulated. So it's always something to take into consideration. But I like the idea of the fact that the days really aren't the same, that depending on the department, depending on the need, that could be an area of healthcare law that I don't know at all, or healthcare compliance that I don't know at all. And so it's time, then I get the opportunity to learn and grow and make sure that, I'm partnering with my colleagues appropriately. So I think that those are the kinds of things that make me look forward to the days ahead and make me look forward to any kind of the challenges that come up. And I think that the culture in general is something that is really important, because any obstacle is okay, or any challenging conversation can prove to be very productive if everyone is coming to the table and you feel that you're working in an environment that is conducive to conflicting ideologies, ideas, and areas of concern. If that is not something that you're feeling as you go into the workforce, that's a problem. And that maybe that's something that can be adjusted, maybe not, but it's important that you can sort of feel that there's a sense of camaraderie and a mutual interest in moving a project forward or an idea forward. So I think it's very easy to immediately feel that in a compliance and legal function, because how often are we saying, oh, I don't know about that, but maybe something else. So I think those are the kinds of things that, every day can kind of pose to be a challenge, which is a little bit cliche, but I do think that the examples that I provided, are very, real examples and true to my day to day anyway.
Thank you, Masha.
Sure.
And Michael, I know, although you're in the pharmaceuticals industry, you have a lens of project management. So, what is your most interesting part of your day, and how do some of those challenges energize you in what you do?
Sure. So because we're a CDMO, we're seeing all different kinds of chemistries from different customers, and different customers they operate in different ways. So, I mean, firstly, seeing the different chemistries about, where people are getting from A to B, is really interesting. But I think once I got the MSJ, I started looking at things differently. And so looking today at the strategies that companies employ to bring a drug to market, is really interesting to me because, some customers, they're very aggressive, right? And others are very cautious and methodical. And I can see, underlying now, I can see the thought process between, what someone's doing and some of the questions that they're asking. I kind of understand underneath it what they're trying to get at and what they're trying to ensure that is addressed in the development stage. So, definitely being part of, and seeing something that you played a role in, make it to market is fantastic. But seeing how people get there is really interesting. Whether they're leveraging laws, such as orphan drug status, fast track breakthrough, whatever it is. And kind of looking at saying, okay, what is their approach in terms of how they're targeting these things? And looking at it, earlier, I probably looked at it more myopically, right? I was looking more at the chemistry and just, hey, getting the active ingredient made or the intermediate, whatever it was. Now I'm looking at it more holistically in terms of, what, as Masha said, what's the end game, right? And trying to help the customers getting there. I think sometimes, you do get the challenges of getting people to consider what needs to be done versus what, they think is common practice or more practical or more expedient, whatever it is. That's definitely a challenge to get people on board sometimes. But I think, some of the tangible things that I got out of the program, like specific knowledge, but some of the intangible things, like the way I communicate, and speaking with authority and confidence. I think Michelle had mentioned about the confidence level that's gained out of getting that knowledge, acquiring that knowledge out of all the work that we put in. It makes people respond to me differently. So people don't always remember what you say, right? They remember how you feel, how you make them feel. And so if I speak with authority and I communicate with authority, people tend to think, look at me as authoritative. So, definitely, that's been a challenge, but I think, some of the good things, coming out of that is, developing patentable processes with our partners, evaluating those things. Again, seeing a program go from early stage, being on it for years, right? And seeing that go commercial and seeing it impacting so many people has been very rewarding. And I have to admit, winning contractual arguments with some lawyers has been a joy. Citing case law and being able to say, okay, well, because for me, one of the big things was the on sale bar, for those that might be familiar, but um, having those discussions with the customers, the prototype versus an actual product that's for sale, and having certain discussions like those, they do bring a sense of pride, right, and accomplishment, and again, it reinforces that confidence in hey, I'm doing what's right, and I'm doing what's best for my company, in our interest. And what I learned in the MSJ program enabled me to do that. So.
Thank you very much, Michael. Very insightful answers. Thank you so much for your transparency in those responses as well. I want to jump back up to question 5, and I want to pose this question to Michelle and Masha. But let's talk about network building. So, how important has the cultivation of your network been to your career? And how did you go about cultivating a professional network? Michelle, let's start with you.
Well, I'll tell you how I met Masha. We were in class. She posted a discussion question response, and I don't remember which question it was. And it was a response about the FDA and some woman who was doing some sort of compliance study. I was like, oh my gosh, she captivated me in her response, the way she wrote it. So I sent her a private message, and to this day, we went through a few classes together after that, and we met at graduation, and we've been professional and friendly since. So it was just me taking that step on something that inspired me in class. Because our program was remote, it's harder to see a face sometimes and take that initial step. But Masha and I even talked on the phone sometimes about some of our work, and like, I'm like, we brainstormed together. And I think it was like great because I didn't get to know everyone. Some people were in multiple classes of mine, some people were in one class. And it helped me. LinkedIn helps. You have to connect, because if people are in need of a job, I think any one of us, maybe I know I have open positions at our new company. I don't know about Masha and Michael, but it's who you know. I've even gotten requests on LinkedIn from former MSJ people who have seen my degree and connected with me, asked me a question. And again, do I know them well? No. Do I know what they put into this program and how hard they worked over 3-4 years, just with the classwork, and on top of probably their work, their family life, and everything else that they have. So I think that the networking, reach out to a classmate if you see an interesting post. That's what the message option is for. You can also form like a study group. Some of the material is super challenging. And to me, that was super helpful as well. Even if you talk via email or text or whatever it might be, that's more convenient for each person's schedule. There was only, I think, one class with a group activity, but it was still more fairly individual. So the more that you can take that step, connect with former MSJs on LinkedIn. I think anyone and everyone is willing to help out. And I also think, Gregory, one of the things that we didn't have a Gregory when we went through the program is to use your resources and your networking, and you're an expert in this field to help connect people, whether it's for questions or for jobs, careers. And I think that what this position being created for you really helps students go in the right direction. So I wouldn't have met Masha otherwise. I met another woman as well in one of my first classes, and she and I are still friendly to this day. And again, to me, it's you meet your lifelong friends, I guess, and you realize what you actually have in common. And in addition to the law, we all have some sort of healthcare drive and passion in us.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that, Michelle. What I gather from that is just the importance of, turning your classmates into colleagues, right? So you're getting an advanced degree, right? And you're getting that with classmates who are going to go out and do amazing things in their own careers. And that's one way to help build your network, right? With the people right next to you. Well, Masha, I know you attended some professional conferences. So tell us a little bit about how that helped build your network.
Absolutely. Thank you. And thank you, Michelle. That was very kind of you. And I'm very glad that you did reach out. And it's been an absolute pleasure to be able to stay in touch and become friends since we met in the program, because you're right. When you're not physically with people, it is that much harder. So I would say, you do not underemphasize, and I cannot overemphasize, I guess I should say, the importance of some type of professional networking as well. So whether you're staying in the career that you're in, you want to branch out into something new, whatever. One thing that has been really interesting, and the first way I even found out about Seton Hall's law program, because again, I don't live in New Jersey, right? So it's not something that's like self-evident, is all of these different conferences that I was going to, and they were varying across disease state. They could have been like the Pharmaceutical Specialty Congress, what they call like PCC. There's a number of other conferences. I kept seeing like the Seton Hall Law table and booth set up in like the exhibit hall areas. And I thought that was really interesting. And eventually, like with time, I kind of saw them once and then twice. You guys also have very good swag. I think that shouldn't be understated. And so like I ended up going over there and getting brochures, and like you get a chance to meet the representatives. And so that was really interesting. But it's networking is really hard. And I am not, and this may not at all come across this way on camera, I don't know, but I'm not an extrovert by nature. And so these kinds of like outward, networking activities where you don't really know anybody can be very challenging. And it is not necessarily in everyone's wheelhouse. So if you work at an organization, or if it's through a school, or if it's through another program that, where it's possible, and you can go with someone, and it's possible for you to attend a program, whatever the topic might be, especially if it's something that interests you, go and listen in and see who you can meet. And even if it's one person's one business card and you and you connect on LinkedIn, that's one more person. And that's how you slowly kind of, sometimes it's faster, right? Individuals like you, Gregory, make that so much, more efficient. And it really takes a lot of the onus off of the individuals. And because we're so lucky to have such an important resource, in your professional expertise. But if that's not something that, you are ready to utilize, or you just want to know from a professional perspective, just start going. Like, no one can do that part for you. And so as you get to know people, sometimes different sponsors will host different dinners or networking, cocktail hours or whatever. Go. It again, for some people it's very easy and it's a wonderful networking opportunity. For other people, it's really hard. And so it just takes getting to know one person or two people. And you realize, especially in healthcare, it is, Kevin Bacon has like nothing on us. It is all like at most 2 degrees of separation. It's like, you knew my aunt, my mom, somehow my sister, like everyone is connected somehow. And it is such a small industry, which is both good and can certainly pose its challenges. But once you start to kind of, broaden your horizons, you'll realize just how many more people you actually might know. New Jersey is such an amazing hub of biotech and pharma and med device, if that's something that you're interested in. Boston is certainly as well. So try it. I can't emphasize it enough. And at the very least, you'll see a Seton Hall booth there. And so you'll see a familiar face. And that part really helps. So I will say that that's probably something that's helped a lot. Knowing that being able to have Michelle as a friend and a resource. And yeah, we were on the phone and we chatted, and there's you have that moment where you're like, I'm sorry, I am reading this question and it means nothing to me. Like, I have like lost control and I have no idea what this question is. But so you have somebody to be able to do that with while you're going through the program. And I think that's really important. But then you can also continue that through, especially because we have different areas of expertise, and we have some overlapping skill sets for sure in our professional lives, but we have probably more unique skill sets, which is so great, because that means when there's an area that I know nothing about, I know who I can call, right? And where if I need help, because it's not my area of expertise, but it is Michelle's, and it is somebody else that you might meet, whether it's through your program or somewhere else. So network where you can, knowing full well that that's not easy for folks, but it is really important however you get there.
And I was just going to add,
Absolutely.
Masha, to that real quick, Gregory, is Seton Hall has this amazing group of professors, instructors, law experts. If you see their bio and there's something that you find interesting, send them an email, send them a message, because they may be members of some professional organization or network, as Masha mentioned. Ask them. And they may say, hey, I'm the Women's Business Association or something like that. So it doesn't have to necessarily, as Masha said, be healthcare related. But you would be surprised if you go to something and you're going to find Seton Hall alumni, and someone works in healthcare some way, and that one person may know 6 other people to help you or answer the question. So I think to add to this topic is utilize the faculty, utilize the resources at Seton Hall.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you both for your responses. And I definitely want to piggyback off of what both of you said. So one thing that we definitely emphasize in the Office of Career Services is joining professional organizations, right? So as Masha alluded to, being able to go to a conference and make connections, I will reiterate that. There are organizations that you can join that are both specialized and broad in both the legal field and compliance field, that will allow you or put you in position to meet other like-minded professionals, that whether or not, it leads to directly a job opportunity or not, at the very least, you gain connection. So some of the organizations that we recommend on a frequent basis is joining the American Bar Association, the New York City Bar Association, the Healthcare Compliance Association, and the Society of Corporate Compliance and Ethics. Joining these organizations, they have their own job boards, right? So if you're looking for a job, if you're actively looking, you could filter some of the opportunities to titles that you're looking for, cities that you're looking to work in, right? They also have a constant calendar of events. So whether or not they're in person or virtual, being able to make yourself seen, get your name out there, get on email lists, right? Join newsletters. That's a way for you to begin to meet at least one person per event, right? And that's how you build your professional network. I'm also always going to reiterate LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a very powerful tool. So not only in terms of job search or networking, but also in your job search. The job function on LinkedIn is extremely powerful, and it's all about what you do with it and how you use it, right? So not only does LinkedIn provide you job opportunities, you can click on those companies and see who works for those companies and make blind or cold connections through LinkedIn as well, right? And so that's where all of your training and expertise from your degree, whether it be your JD or your MSJ or MLS, comes into play, because you'll know how to start that conversation, right? And you lead just with introducing yourself and letting people know what you're looking for, but you have direct access to employees in just about every industry, at every employer through LinkedIn. So making sure that you cultivate your network in a holistic approach, right? So not just through your school, or you want to go through your school, you have your classmates, you have professional organizations, and then you also have LinkedIn, right? So thank you all for those answers. We're going to go over a few more questions before we open it up for question and answer. All right. I'm going to jump down to question 9, and I'm going to propose this to Michelle. Of course, we all know that in this economic climate, the labor market can be difficult to navigate. Can you speak a little bit about how one goes about getting a job in your field and some of the challenges that students may face in their journey?
Absolutely. And I think we covered that a little bit in the last question about networking and just, taking a chance to meet people, make a cold call or a cold email. Working for 3M Healthcare, and our new company is going to be called Solventum when we go public in the next few weeks. It's challenging to get in the door because if we jump back many years, it was the old school. Who knows who? Let me hand you my resume. Now, when you put your resume in, whether it be LinkedIn or any other online format, it goes through like a reader and it looks for the buzzwords. So I would suggest, if you're looking for a position in compliance, to make sure that if you see a job description, to make sure you have the right buzzwords in that resume. Otherwise, it will kind of get put to the wayside, and you could be the most qualified candidate, but if those buzzwords aren't there, the hiring manager may never see the resume. So that's my first suggestion. The second suggestion that I have that I did, even internally, when I moved positions to come over to the strategic sourcing group, I hired a job coach. And I'm sure Gregory would be a great job coach. Someone looked at my resume for me, helped me. I did mock interviews. And it sounds like, oh, that's kind of silly, but it's not. Just to get your camera right, being someone asking you those questions, because if you are interviewing remotely, they can't see all your body language. And I think for those people in a room where they're seeing the top half of the person in any job that you're applying for, practice, 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 practice with another person, being on camera, dress the way you would dress for an interview. So I think those are the few things that I would suggest as far as skills and resources. But at 3M for us, it's sometimes who you know. And someone will see something on the job board. They'll reach out to me and say, hey, do you know the hiring manager of this? And I can take it and look and say, oh, yes, I know them. I'll send them a private message. Say, hey, my friend Masha is applying. Here's her resume. She applied through the portal as well. Keep your eyes open. So again, those connections. And again, even if you just meet someone briefly and saying, hey, look, I have an interest in applying for this job. Here's my resume. What do you think of this? And I think that feedback is imperative. I think writing a good cover letter is also very helpful of why you are unique to have that position. And you may have to have separate cover letters or separate resumes. If you're going for maybe a job in compliance with one and a project management compliance type of position in another company. So you really have to tailor it to your needs. But again, it's not easy in the market. There's a lot of jobs out there and you have to act quickly. And I think patience, I know for us, it can take 6 to 8 months to onboard somebody. So just because you don't hear immediately doesn't mean you're not the right candidate. It just may take many months for someone to respond.
Yeah, thank you. That was very insightful, Michelle. And you spoke a lot to some of the challenges that exist in the market, and getting on with an employer. Something that I tell students that come to me that are in search of jobs is to utilize your degree to articulate yourself as an expert in your field. So many of us, as we apply to jobs, we think, I don't have the experience, I should apply for entry-level jobs, and as I make this pivot, but that's not necessarily always the case. Especially in the MLS program or the MSJ program, I tell students, you've gone to school for 2 years, 2 years plus if you had to spread it out, right? And you concentrated in a specific area. So in essence, you do have 2 years of experience. You've gone through and you've gotten that degree, and you're an expert just without the working experience, right? So one way to articulate that on your resume document is to talk about relevant coursework that you've completed, right? You can talk about your GPA if you want. You can also use some of the guides that we give out that give you some of the core competencies within each industry, so that you can input those in some of your descriptions of the jobs that you're currently doing, because some of your skills may be transferable, right? So it's all about how you position yourself, how you articulate your experiences that can help you become more recognizable in some of these industries and into some of the jobs that we're applying for. And who better to use for those services? Of course, the Office of Career Services offers all of those services, right? We have your resume review. We can help you with your job search strategy and come up with the technique of how to use some of the search engines to find a job that's applicable to you. I want to ask 2 more questions before we open it up for question and answer. Question number 1, and I'll open this up to Michael and Masha. Our 8th question on our question board, what can someone expect in terms of career growth? And as a follow-up to that question, what can be expected in terms of compensation? Michael, I'll open that up to you first.
Yeah, so mine, like I said, I was, it was kind of a linear path, but I would say that once I got the MSJ, it became a little bit more parabolic. So, immediately afterwards, for me, it came with a promotion, and a raise. It ended up being, I think, I don't know, like 15-20% in that range. So it was a significant benefit to me. And then again, that differentiator, right? So when it came time when they were looking for someone to oversee all the project management, having that on my resume, having the MSJ there set me apart from others. And so that enabled me to to look better on paper. But I think also, when we opened up in terms of discussing the skills that we acquired, the knowledge, how that played into, becoming a better leader, a better communicator, a resource for the team, right? So, someone that's going to be overseeing a group of people should be a resource for those that are underneath them. And so those are things that I acquired through the program that I wouldn't have otherwise.
Thank you, Michael. Masha?
Yeah, so I would say, in my experience, it may not always appear as linear. I think, again, it depends if you're moving from industry to industry, or even if you're in the same industry, but it's department within department. So I think that it is very reasonable to expect some type of financial ROI on you having gone and graduated from law school. That is a reasonable expectation. I think that's very fair. But I think it depends on what happens with that particular degree. So if you have a career, if you had a very compliance focused career, and that's something that you had spent a lot of time in doing, and suddenly you thought, well, I'd like to really explore regulatory affairs, and I'd really like to understand like what happens on the regulatory side. You may not get the same title, and you may not necessarily get the same comp. It might be similar. It might be, I think that advanced degree might be what would allow somebody to look at your resume a little while longer and allow you to sort of explore that new area. But I do think you need to take that into consideration. It isn't always going to be sort of like a straight path. And while I think that can be really frustrating, I think it's important to sort of look at it, with multiple data points over time, right? And so you might be a senior manager somewhere right now, and often the common adage is, if you ever want to see like a big jump in salary, and if you ever want to see a big jump in title, you got to leave. Like, you can't see it where you work. I don't know that that's always true. I wouldn't be so quick to paint with that broad of a brush, but if it can be true. It has been true in my career, but it's also not been true in my career, right? So just me as anecdotal evidence is enough to say that sometimes I guess that adage makes sense, and sometimes it doesn't. But I think the one thing to note is, what is it that you're actually trying to accomplish? And I think it's always thinking about multiple steps ahead. And if you don't know the answer, that's actually fine. You don't have to know exactly what you want to do. There's nothing that like irks me more than when people are like, where do you see yourself 5 years from now? I'm like, 5 years older. I don't know. Like, I'm trying to figure out, like, I think it's important to sort of like figure out what, you want to do. But I just know that your title and your comp will vary. It will also vary depending on where you live and where that office is located. If you live in Boston, if you live in, if you live in New York, if you live in New Jersey, that comp is going to look more or less similar than if you live in North Carolina, than if that office is located in Atlanta, Georgia. If it is, again, that is something that you want to take into consideration. Generally, cost of living is going to be lower. So I think it all depends. I know I gave a lot of different purviews for the same general question, but I say all that because I don't think there is one right answer. And I think as long as you are figuring out what interests you, and Seton Hall is a really great way and a very important stepping stone to open up a lot more avenues to what maybe wouldn't have been feasible and accessible for you before. Then if you are making a lateral move, it's actually not a lateral move at all. It might appear that way in title, but it sure isn't in experience. So I think when you think about terms of compensation and you think about career growth, don't just think about it as titles and money. Think about it as what are you trying to achieve and attain as a whole. And the money and the title will come once you kind of figure out what that is. And the one thing I will say that is a little bit, I digress a little bit on this, but I do find it still relevant. Follow the people more than the job, if that makes sense. You could find somebody who can suck the joy out of something that you found so interesting so fast, and you can find somebody who made something that you never gave any attention to for 5 seconds one of the most interesting things that you could talk about and you want to learn more about, and you could make a career out of it. So follow people. Good leaders, you have no idea where they're going to come from. You have no idea where they are in their career and what their previous experience has been. I think all of that is how you build your career and you figure out what your career growth needs to look like. I can't emphasize those parts enough, I think.
Thank you, Marsha. That was brilliant. My last question, before we go into our question and answers, just an opportunity for you to give back. If you were speaking to yourself, if you were back in law school or back at the law school, what advice would you have for a current student looking to utilize their degree to leverage the next phase of their career or to launch their career? And I'm going to open this up to everyone. So, Michelle, would you like to start?
Wow. I guess, Masha said, don't ask her what's going to happen in 5 years, but looking back 5 years, I never would have figured I'd be doing contracts, negotiations, and working for a brand new startup healthcare company. Like, it would never have crossed my mind, because after I graduated, I applied for my current job 4 months later. It just happened again. I was going to stay where I was until something opened either internally or externally. And I followed the leader, and I heard great things about my new leader. So could I have left and gone elsewhere? Absolutely. But the people at 3M is what inspired me to stay. I get to work with my old team and all my old colleagues. So for me, again, it echoes what Masha said about the people, because the grass isn't always greener. Just because the money's there, if you're not happy and you're working 24/7, great, you're not going to stay all that long. But I guess I never really knew what the degree could do for me. We didn't have these panel discussions, and we didn't have a lot of again, it was during COVID time. So again, a lot of things were different. So I guess I had to believe in myself and that I had the skills. I was given this amazing degree that I framed, that I look at every day in my home office, and it gives me that pride. And I took a chance and applied for a job. What's the worst that happened? I didn't get it, and I continue my search. I fell into this naturally. It works for me. I want to work with people. I wanted to have challenges day in, day out. I like to solve problems. I like crisis management, and that's what I do. Besides all the great contracts, but no 2 days for me are similar. No 2 hours for me are similar. And I'm given the challenges. I'm given the respect, and you have to earn it. So you have to prove to your colleagues, your peers as well, not just your leadership, and just make sure that there's respect, whether it's an admin assistant that you're working with or a senior leader, giving respect. And that's what I learned out of this degree as well. It's a mutual relationship. It's not just one way, and you never know when you're going to need this person in the future. So I would never have anticipated I'd be where I am today. So it kind of just changed my whole career trajectory, my path. And if I can help anyone who's here tonight, I am happy to do it. If we have a job that's open, we're building a brand new company from the ground up. It is chaos. Absolutely. If you like good chaos, again, we're here. But I think the other thing about the healthcare industry, whether you're in compliance or sourcing or project management, there's change. All it takes is a new law to come out. It changes everything. And, or your company comes out with a new protocol. You know, we have very strong Stark laws because we operate out of Texas. If you have a chance and you think you might be in Texas and working with healthcare professionals, take the Stark class. That is going to be super valuable. If you're going to be working like me in marketing, the compliance issues, I think it's fraud and corruption and the life sciences. Again, take those classes. Are they fun electives? For me, absolutely. If you think you might want to work with children, there's the children, I believe Children in the Law is the name of the class. Maybe they renamed it. For me, HIPAA, I know it's a requirement in the MLS program. That has been probably the best class that I took, along with the legal writing class. Again, enjoy the classes, take them to heart, learn all you can. The reward will come. It may not be the day after graduation or the week after, and it might be 2 years later. Enjoy the run, celebrate every win you have, and it will come back to you.
Thank you so much for that, Michelle. Michael, anything that you want to add?
Yeah, I think just, you know, if I was talking to myself when I first, joined, is don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to ask a lot of questions. Don't be afraid to engage with your peers and the professors, especially. I think Michelle had a great point. I had some really excellent interactions with the professors in the program that I appreciated. I think I was able to apply what I was able to learn immediately. And then I will say that the letters next to the name, right? So, I go to a lot of trade shows and I meet a lot of people, and there's a lot of letters after the names. And MSJ kind of stands out as MLS does. And so it's a good conversation starter. And it makes having that conversation easier with people. So it was definitely a rewarding program. At times, it took some perseverance and self-encouragement, but definitely was worthwhile on the other side. So.
Thank you, Michael. Last but certainly not least, Masha, anything you want to add?
Yeah, I mean, I think my other two panelists really summed it up really well, but I think when you graduate from Seton Hall, this is something that is definitely something that continues with you, and whether you're doing professional networking, whether it's something that occurs personally, it's really interesting sort of what happens next. And I think it sort of echoes my earlier point about like the question about like, oh, where do you see yourself 5 years from now? You don't know. And that's actually kind of great. I think it's important to have goals and lofty goals and figuring out what that looks like, but knowing down to a T exactly where you're going to be and how that's going to play out. I think Michelle, made an excellent point earlier, which is that I didn't think Seton Hall was going to ask me to join a panel. I also was an advisor for the American Health Law Association. So I sat on that advisory panel, and then I participated in the early Career Professionals Council, which is also something, by the way, that might be worth looking into for folks on the call. And individuals are reaching out to me, and I would have never in a million years thought that somebody wanted to reach out and ask me questions and thought that I had a perspective that was worth sharing. And I just think that that's been really great. And again, this has all been kudos to that program. So a lot of it is time and patience and knowing that everyone's progress through their academic career is very different, and their progress through their professional career is different as well. But the one thing that I think is really important, and I would say this to anyone leaving, either just having graduated earlier in their career, or you might know somebody who might go into that professional career, someone more junior, however they are more junior, whether that's because they've entered the workforce more recently or because they just entered this line of work earlier. Please don't think that just because someone has done it for a less period of time, they're not doing it just as well, right? I often say just because someone's done it longer doesn't mean they've done it better. And I think that's really important because just because you're newer to something does not mean that you don't have really invaluable advice and perspective. And everyone has such a different, life, and they're from all over the United States or even internationally when we were in the program. So you never know where people's personal and professional expertise comes from, and never dismiss it for any reason. It is truly, I will say, I remember sort of having that feeling on the receiving end when I was earlier in my career. And I remember distinctly the people who made sure I was never treated any differently. And that's always something that I like to emulate and carry through because, Michael has a point. You go through graduate school, you go to law school, maybe that is intimidating to people, maybe it's not, but you're going to come across somebody who they might be younger, they might be newer, they might not have gone to law school, and their insight is going to be really important. And so I think it's just as important to never lose sight of that. So that's something that I would say to myself, a number of, if I were able to speak to my younger self, one, and two, if you don't know what you're doing 5 years from now, I think that's kind of great. So long as there's something that you want to be doing, and you're interested in exploring it accordingly. So that's all I got.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you very much. To kick off our question and answer, Kimberla Gamble, who, as she stated, is no relation to me, asked a question. Kimberla, if you like, you can unmute and ask a question to the group, or I can read the question out loud.
Hi, Gregory. Thank you. No, I don't mind asking the group. I've been in the biotech industry for a very long time. I've been in pharmacovigilance. I've done some quality. And now that I'm in this program, I'm really interested in transitioning into more of a compliance role. And so I just wanted to know, and I think you may have touched on it a little bit, but I really wanted to know, what are some key things that I could do to kind of help me ease into that transition from pharmacovigilance into more of a compliance role?
What kind of compliance do you have in mind? Are you looking at more what Masha does? Like, as a company, are you looking for healthcare professional? Are you looking for sourcing compliance, regulatory compliance? Do you have a area that maybe
Yeah, I'm a nurse by training, so I have that component to my skill set, but I am looking probably more into what Masha is doing, more of corporate compliance, more of that, because I do want to stay in industry. I've been in it for, I don't even want to say how long, but I've been in it for quite some time, and I'm not really looking to leave. So I'm looking more of corporate compliance, perhaps for a pharma or a biotech company.
Well, come on down. We'd love to have you in compliance. The more the merrier, please, by all means. We'd be thrilled. I speak on behalf of all compliance professionals. I do not. I'm just kidding. But yes, we absolutely. If it's an area that interests you, I think that's great. And absolutely, anyone that is interested in compliance, honestly, I think it goes back to my earlier point. There are so many compliance focused conferences, truly, and you do not have to go to them in person, but if you can, that would be great. And there's some in DC, there's just a plethora of them, truly. And you go to a couple and you meet a few folks, and honestly, through the networking, you get a chance to join like this. I can't even tell you, I am aware of a couple, but I'm sure there's a lot more of these just compliance, like almost email groups, and they start to we email each other questions about what's happening in the industry, what are folks doing this and about that, but also they say, I have a position that's open, or I have an individual that's looking for a job. And so that's that kind of networking that sort of goes into it. So if it's something that you're interested in, you would like to explore further, I think your PV background is going to be tremendous. That is just fantastic. And so that is certainly, a big add. The fact that you're going through this law program obviously is also great. So all of these things are just major, positives in the pro-con list. I think you'll probably be pleasantly surprised how many like transferable skills there are. Now, again, I don't know where you are, in your career structure as it relates to PV. So, will you definitely get the same title that you have now? I couldn't possibly say, and it's not for me to say. And I think if you're open to, having a different title, then that will certainly keep the doors open. And even if people aren't hiring, informational interviews are actually kind of useful. You get a chance to meet some more people. You can do it virtually. You don't necessarily have to, hike to a meeting. But I think all of those things in combination will absolutely move the needle. And I have to say, there have been individuals that have gone into compliance. I did it actually in a relatively unusual manner. I did it actually through marketing, like commercial operations. That's how I first got into pharma, and then I just switched over into legal and compliance. But PV, that, please, like that is a very, that is a completely, different kettle of fish. And so I think that that's a much better, much better transition. Again, there's going to be a learning curve. You have to sort of be open to the fact that now suddenly there's going to be a lot of content that you may not necessarily know and that you did before. But I think that you'll be able to fill in that gap really quickly. And the people that you meet will help be able to do that accordingly.
And Masha, to build on that, I think the other thing to keep in mind, there are a lot of positions out there that will be a compliance type of position, but maybe the word compliance is not in the title. So for us, we don't have the titles of compliance managers. In our team, we are all category managers, and we all have a compliance background, and we have compliance regulations we have to follow. So it's part of our job description. So just because you don't see the word compliance, don't negate that as unless that's important to you, of course. But throughout my company, we have like one chief compliance officer, and even in that organization, people don't have that type of title. So just something else to keep in mind. And also, if where you are now, if you do have a compliance team or group that oversees it, get to know them. As Masha said, talk to them about what they do every day. Maybe you're familiar, maybe you're not, but maybe if something opens up there, they'll be like, hey, we know the perfect person who has interest. And I think when you express interest and passion for something, that can make a huge difference as well.
Awesome.
That's
Thank
great.
you
Thank
so
you
much,
so much.
Michelle, Masha. Those answers were perfect. And I know that not only Kimberla, but some others needed to hear those exact sentiments that you both shared tonight. We got a few more questions. This is awesome. So Agatha, would you like to unmute?
Hi, good evening. Yes, I'll unmute. Everyone hears me. Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, so I just wanted to thank everyone for this information. I joined really late. I got home from work and I have my daughter. But so currently I'm in my last course getting my MLS in health and hospital. That's my main concentration. And second concentration is pharma and med device. So currently I'm a paralegal. I've been a paralegal for 4 years now. I worked at the courts. I did criminal, but now I work for a medical monitoring company. Um, I'm not even gonna lie, I don't want to stay there. It's very stagnant. It's paper pushing, really. I'm not doing anything. I'm not using my brain, and I don't like that. I'm a person, I like learning, growing. I want to be in a job where I grow in my field and I can actually apply what I'm learning in school in life. Um, I don't know how to start that transition. I know I want to end up probably in a hospital, if that's great, since I live nearby all of the Northwell hospitals. I apply, but I don't want to be a paralegal because I feel like the line gets blurred between paralegal and admin assistant or legal secretary or so forth. So I don't know. I feel like it's just a struggle on how to get my foot in that door. I know it's networking, but also networking sometimes can get lost in the mix because the people you're networking are also professionals and they have their day-to-days to worry about.
So I guess Agatha, your question is, how do you
The transition, yeah, the
Yeah.
transition from I don't know, being in a field or being in a position that had nothing to do with your degree, or more so, how do you create a role for your degree? Because, like you guys mentioned, a lot of people haven't heard of MLS or MSJ. So now it's like, how do I sell my degree? Like, hey, this degree is amazing and you should create a role for me, or here's what I bring and here's what I can do. And here's what
Great
I know.
question. Great
So
question.
great. I have actually a question back for you, Agatha. I had a curiosity. So based off of what you're saying, and everything you're saying resonates very much.
Mhm.
What is it like if you could create a role for yourself? What does it look like? Because I know you said you don't want to be a paralegal anymore. So what would it be? I know you said in a hospital, but what at the hospital?
Honestly, I've been in a position before where I worked with the director of compliance for a hospital.
Okay.
I did joint commission with her. I did a bunch of different hats. So I just wanted something where I can combine my degrees. Like I have my
Yeah.
BS in legal studies and I have my associates. I have a paralegal certificate. So it's like I would love to combine legal with compliance, like what Michael was mentioning earlier too. Like I know I can review contracts. I know how to write terms and conditions because of the MLS courses I've taken. So
Sure.
I just want to be able to finally I don't know, be in a position where I can apply all my educational knowledge into
Yeah, no, I hear you. I hear you, for sure. I think that, one of the things, so I think there's a couple approaches. Yep, you're right. Networking is important, but that's not going to be the only thing that's going to get you. I think the other thing that's really important is utilizing a resource like we have with Gregory, and you don't ever want to, underappreciate and undervalue the fact that there is somebody that's dedicated towards that. I think the other thing is, if you're really interested in a particular, I would personally prioritize the industry over the exact job initially, if you had to.
okay.
And what I mean by that is like, if you're like, listen, I really want to work in a hospital. What I want is to work in a hospital. Then I would look for a way to get my foot in the door at the hospital first before you're looking at that specific job, because that could actually come really quickly. But you're
Okay.
right. People haven't necessarily heard of the MSJ or the, or the Masters of Legal Studies. And like, I mean, the number of times that people are like, are you an attorney? I'm like, no. They're like, you went to law school? I'm like, yes. And they're like, all right, I'm tired. Like, and so it's a lot, right? It's a lot to sort of explain. But so I think number one, it's persistence, right? It has to be persistence. And that is a very easy, and I don't mean that as like a cheap cop out at all, because you do have to figure out kind of like what it is. But if what you're saying is, I am tired of this and I definitely want to be like in a hospital setting, then you find a job that will get your foot in the door at the hospital setting, because it is much easier to instigate change internally than it is from the outside. Sure, you could meet somebody through the networking that might know somebody. That's a lot harder, right?
Mhm.
Like, that's a lot harder. So I think that if that's something that you're open to, I would make that, I would make that as like a potential, like, first or second step. See what is there that is transferable for you. I know you said you don't want to be a paralegal for a lot longer, and I completely respect that. But if that meant working at the hospital, would that be a reasonable transition to then see what else is available, and then they'll realize just how invaluable you are and how much more you have to offer? Maybe, right?
Okay.
So just something to consider, but in a nutshell, I would prioritize where you want to be over the exact job. And that
Okay.
can be really frustrating, because you're like, I went to school for all of this. What in the world are you saying? But that is, I have found that has been a little bit of my trajectory and the trajectory of some of my colleagues as well. That if what you really want is to get in first, and then worry about, what exactly you want to do later.
Okay. Yeah, that
And
makes
I
sense.
think, Agatha, to build on that, for me, again, I kind of backtracked before, like what I came in my career at 3M, I would never have anticipated where I would be today. I was in the door, and the job, yeah, it was good. Where was I going to go? I didn't know. And because I was in as an employee and I saw this new posting, I was able to make that move. So I would echo Masha. I think what Gregory had said before is you really need to highlight your courses on your
Yeah.
resume and some of the things that you've accomplished within your major, because I think that that's going to help you get you noticed into the healthcare setting. And then you have to, look internally. But most companies really want to hire from within. It is cheaper for them. Usually they don't have to do the job search. but get in, show them your dynamite with this background, who you are, your experience, and get to know the people in compliance.
Yeah.
You might find that you may find, again, I don't know, working as a paralegal in a hospital is phenomenal. And you get more respect, you get to be challenged more. And again, I don't know that, I don't work in that capacity, but I think every facility is different and every company is slightly different. But if I can help you, please feel free to reach out. I'm not in a hospital setting, but I don't know if you're open to the pharma setting either, because you might
I'm open
be
to learning.
perfect to
Yeah.
go into a legal department within pharma, perhaps, if that's something, or a PBM, I mean, or a CRO. So I think there's a clinical research organization. There may be, or maybe in the lab, there's something, because they need compliance too. So I think there's different areas that you could explore job opportunities and see where the compliance part fits in.
Okay.
And
Thank
Agatha,
you.
it's not either or, it's and, right? To
Yes.
To Michelle's point, apply for the jobs that you want. Do not be shy. You apply for them. You just go ahead and do it. Maybe maybe you know someone, maybe you don't, but you just apply, right? And you make your resume as aligned with the job description as possible. But also don't negate the jobs that you may not want, but in the facility and industry that you do. So
Okay.
it's both. It's always both.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for the information. I
Yep,
appreciate
you
it.
got
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, that was great. That was awesome. Thank you so much. And Agatha, if you're still on, send me your resume, and I would love to look over it, and we could start there. And that's for anyone else that's on the call tonight as well. Send me your resumes, and I can provide you with some comments and feedback, and how to restructure or format your resume document, to put you in a better position or more competitive position in applying for some of these jobs. It is 7:45. I know the meeting was scheduled for a 7:30 end. So I am going to stop here, but I just want to say that tonight has been amazing. Our panelists, thank you, Michelle, Masha, and Michael, for sharing your experiences and your expertise with our students and alumni tonight. This is a recording, so I will be sending it all out via email to all those who were registered, and to some of the students who couldn't make it. And I will be putting this up on our LinkedIn as well. So you can feel free to share it with your professional networks. But we want to thank you all for joining. And we hope that you took something away. There were several gems that were dropped tonight, and hopefully you can apply those to your professional careers, or to your academic journeys, in preparation for your professional career. So with that being said, thank you all again, and good night.
Thank you, Gregory.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thanks,
Thank
everybody.
you.
Thank you, Gregory.
Best
Bye,
of
Michelle.
luck.
Bye, Michael.
Wonderful job, guys.
Thank
Bye,
Thank you.
Michael and Masha. Bye-bye. Thanks.